The night Ethan Ward declared himself bankrupt, he walked out of his own glass tower and sat on the sidewalk with a paper cup in his hands. Nobody recognized that the man begging in the rain owned half the skyline he was staring at. Cold crept up through the concrete, through the thin fabric of the cheap jeans he'd bought with cash, through skin that had spent years protected by heated leather seats and marble floors. Streetlights washed the avenue in a hazy orange glow, turning the streams of rain into silver lines. Cars rolled past, tires whispering on wet asphalt. People hurried by with their heads down, collars up, umbrellas tilted just enough to avoid eye contact with the man on the ground. Ethan curled his fingers tighter around the paper cup. A few coins rattled weakly at the bottom. The sound felt like an insult. A week ago, every step he took echoed off polished stone and glass. Assistants had cleared his path. Elevators had opened at the right floor without him touching a button. Doors had been held by hands that said, "After you, Mr. Ward," even when they secretly hated him. Tonight, someone had shoved past him so hard his shoulders still ached. And the only words he'd heard from strangers were, "Move," and "Watch it," and once, "Get a job." The irony almost made him laugh. He tilted his head back, letting the rain hit his face. The giant screens across the street flashed with the day's headlines, cycling between war, scandal, and the same story that had been running nonstop for 48 hours. Ethan Ward declares bankruptcy. Markets stunned. Billionaire gone mad? Inside the shocking collapse of Ward Global, his photo was everywhere. On television screens, on news apps, on social media. In every image, he was perfectly controlled. Tailored suit, calm expression, the look of a man who knew exactly what he was doing. If only they knew. His teeth started to chatter. He wasn't sure if it was the cold or the adrenaline still leaking out of his system. Even now, even after he had walked into a boardroom, looked his lawyers and executives in the eye, and pulled the pin on his own empire, a small part of him couldn't believe he'd gone through with it. He could have stopped. He could have signed different papers, made different calls. He could have let Damian Cole, his CFO, quietly handle the crisis the normal way. Asset restructuring, layoffs, a dozen backroom deals to keep the machine alive. Instead, Ethan had chosen to burn it all down in a single, public moment. Not because the numbers forced him, because his soul did. For years, he'd watched people orbit his life like moons around a planet, all of them warmed by its gravity, none of them there if it went dark. Women who laughed too hard at his jokes at charity galas, men who called him visionary in interviews and reckless in private. Friends who sent him messages only when they needed an invitation, a favor, a door opened. He couldn't remember the last time someone had knocked on his door just to ask, "Are you okay?" So he'd made a decision that every analyst on the planet now called insane. He staged his own downfall. He hid enough assets in trusts and legal structures to keep his employees from being completely destroyed, then flipped the switch off on himself. No more penthouse, no more driver. No more board votes where he always won. Just this. Concrete, rain, a paper cup, and one insane question looping through his mind. If I had nothing, who would still stand beside me? A couple walked past, arguing softly in the shared bubble of their umbrella. A businessman in an expensive coat stepped wide to avoid the puddle near Ethan's foot, but didn't glance down. A teenager in a hoodie dropped a coin in his cup without slowing, earbuds in, eyes on his phone. "Thanks," Ethan murmured, but the boy was already gone. He caught his reflection in the dark glass of a closed storefront across the street. Without the suit, without the watch, without the careful grooming, he looked smaller. Not weak, just less important, less magnetic. Normal. He tried the word on in his head like a new shirt. Normal. A black sedan rolled up to the curb near the Ward Global Tower. Ethan stiffened automatically, instincts honed from years of security briefings flaring to life. A driver stepped out and opened the back door. Damian Cole emerged, sleek in his tailored suit despite the rain, umbrella already waiting in the driver's hand. From his place on the ground, Ethan watched his former right hand straighten his tie and look up at the building. Ethan's building. No, not his anymore. He'd given that up, too. Damian's expression was impossible to read from this distance, but Ethan didn't need to see his face to know what he'd be thinking. Calculating, repositioning, spinning, drafting statements that painted Ethan as unstable, impulsive, unfit to lead. It was the smart move. Ethan had handed him the narrative like a loaded gun. For a wild, stupid second, Ethan imagined standing up, walking over, and saying, "Hey, Damian, how do I look?" He stayed where he was. That life was over. For now. Thunder rolled somewhere beyond the skyscrapers. Rain intensified, turning from a steady curtain into a sharper, colder sheet. Ethan hunched his shoulders and tucked his chin down, but he didn't move. He needed to stay. He needed to know. People talk differently when they think no one is listening. They act differently when they think you don't matter. He wanted them to forget him. Only then, when he truly had nothing, would the experiment be real. The first shove came from the side. "Hey," a rough voice barked. "You're in my spot." Ethan's shoulder jolted. The paper cup nearly slipped from his hand. He looked up. 3 men loomed over him, shapes cut from the dark. Cheap jackets, wet sneakers, cigarettes glowing like angry eyes between their fingers. "Sorry," Ethan said quietly. "Didn't know the sidewalk was reserved." The one in front laughed, a short, mean sound. "We work this block," he said. "You don't just sit down with your little cup and take our money. Move along, Grandpa." Grandpa? That was new. He wasn't even 40. The insult still stung. "I'm not taking much from anyone," Ethan said. He lifted the cup. The coins clinked. "Trust me." The man snatched the cup out of his hand so fast Ethan didn't even see his arm move. "Then this won't matter," the guy sneered. He turned the cup upside down. The coins scattered across the wet pavement, spinning, then lying still in dirty puddles. Something hot flared in Ethan's chest. Not just at the loss of the coins, though the absurdity of caring about them after everything he'd signed away wasn't lost on him, but at the petty cruelty of it. "You didn't have to do that," he said, his voice low. "Yeah?" The guy stepped closer, breath sour, eyes sharp. "And you don't have to sit on our corner. World's unfair." The second man, taller, laughed and nudged Ethan's shoulder with the toe of his shoe. "Look at him. He doesn't even smell like the others. Probably new at this. Maybe we should give him a welcome lesson." The third remained silent, eyes flicking between them and the street, weighing the risk of a cop car suddenly rolling up. Faces blurred past at the edge of Ethan's vision. People seeing, deciding none of this was their business, and walking faster. This was what he'd asked for, wasn't it? No more glass, no more bodyguards, no more insulated life. Just him and the world, raw and unsheltered. He didn't raise a hand. He didn't stand up. He made a choice. If he fought back now, it would be muscle memory from a life built on power, reflexive dominance. That wasn't the man he wanted to test. So Ethan bent forward and started gathering the coins. His fingers, numb from cold, fumbled on the wet concrete. A shoe kicked his hand away. "I said," the leader growled, "move." This is where you stood up, in the old life. This is where you called security, or the police, or you simply never ended up in this situation in the first place because nothing ever touched you. In this life, he was supposed to be powerless. That was the point. Still, something inside him rebelled. He straightened, slowly. Rain dripped from his hair into his eyes. "I'm not hurting you," Ethan said. and those coins barely buy a cup of coffee. Let me keep what's left of my pride, man." The guy's lip curled. "Pride doesn't pay rent." He shoved Ethan again, harder this time. Ethan's back hit the cold, wet glass of the storefront. Pain shot across his shoulder blades. His bag, what little he'd brought with him into this experiment, thumped against the glass and slid sideways. The second man laughed louder. "Welcome to the bottom, rich boy," he said. "Oh, you think we don't recognize the type? You fall harder than anyone else." Rich boy. Ethan froze. The word punched clean through him. His disguise was cheap, but his posture, his speech, his eyes, they betrayed him. Even dirty and soaked, there was something about him that didn't quite fit the gutter. The leader leaned in close. "Maybe you used to be somebody," he hissed. "You're not now." Before Ethan could answer, another voice cut through the rain.
"Hey!"
It wasn't deep or commanding. It didn't boom with authority. It cracked a little on the first syllable, like the speaker wasn't sure this was a good idea and did it anyway. All four men, Ethan and his three tormentors, turned toward the sound. She stood a few meters away, under a broken umbrella that sagged to one side where the metal ribs had snapped. Rain slipped off the torn edge and soaked the shoulder of her thrift store coat. Her hair clung to her cheeks in damp waves. A messenger bag hung from her shoulder, stuffed so full it pulled the strap diagonally across her chest. Her eyes, though, were dry fire.
"What do you think you're doing?"
she demanded. The leader groaned. "Oh, come on," he said. "Really? We're doing a public service here, teaching this guy the rules." "The rules," she repeated, taking a step closer. She had to raise her voice to be heard over a passing bus. "The rules say 3 of you pick on one guy sitting in the rain and steal his money?" "You his lawyer?" the tall one jeered. "Do I look like I can afford a law degree?" she shot back. Despite himself, Ethan felt a corner of his mouth twitch. That was not the response he'd expected. "This isn't your business," the leader snapped. She came closer again. Ethan noticed her boots, cracked at the seams, toes scuffed white. She wasn't rich. She wasn't powerful. She was just tired and soaked and refusing to walk away. "That's the thing," she said. "It is my business, because I live in this neighborhood. I walk this block. And I'm not stepping over some guy's body tomorrow morning because you decided to teach him a lesson tonight." One of the men snorted. "You gonna stop us?" She swallowed. Ethan saw the small movement, the way her fingers tightened on the umbrella handle. She was scared. She stepped forward anyway. "If you hurt him," she said, "I call the police, and I scream, and I know every window on this street. Half these people owe me tips for coffee. They will come out." The silent one shifted his weight, uneasy. "We don't need this," he muttered to the leader. "Let's just go." The leader hesitated, pride and survival doing a quick, silent calculation inside his head. Rain beat down. Cars rolled by indifferent. He spat on the pavement near Ethan's shoe, then shoved Ethan's cup back into his chest so hard the rim crumpled. "Keep your pennies, rich boy," he said. "They're all you've got now." He jerked his chin at his friends. "Come on." They peeled away, throwing a last glare at the girl with the umbrella as they went. She held their gaze until they turned the corner. Only when they were gone did her shoulders drop. The silence they left behind felt louder than the rain. Ethan let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. His heart still hammered against his ribs. "You okay?" the girl asked, turning to him. He took her in properly now. She was younger than him, mid-20s maybe, with eyes too big for a face that tired. Dark smudges of sleeplessness marked the skin beneath them. Her coat was fraying at the cuffs, and there was a faint ring of flour dusting one sleeve, as if she'd wiped her hands on it in a hurry. "I've been better," Ethan said. The attempt at humor came out thinner than he intended. He glanced down at the cup. "Guess this is what rock bottom looks like. You picked a nice scenic view for it." she said, nodding toward the towering glass building behind him. Strong, cruel irony vibes. He almost smiled. Yeah, something like that. She shifted the umbrella to cover him more and herself less. Rain immediately started soaking the other side of her hair. He noticed and frowned. You don't have to. Yes, I do, she interrupted. I can't just leave you here shaking like that. You'll get sick. I've had worse, he said. She tilted her head. Have you? He thought of boardrooms and betrayals, headlines and hollow congratulations, deals that saved millions and destroyed just as many. Different kind of worse, he admitted. Less rain, more paperwork. Paperwork, she repeated, studying him. You really don't sound like you belong out here. That's kind of the point, he said before he could stop himself. She blinked at that, a little thrown, but let it go. Look, she said, do you have anywhere to go tonight? He hesitated. He had safe houses he could have used, old colleagues he could have called, lawyers who would still pick up the phone if he dialed. That was the truth. But No, Ethan said. Any shelters, she pressed. They're full, he lied. Or maybe he was just guessing. It felt true. The city always seemed full of people who had run out of places to go. She bit her lip, thinking. Rain continued its patient assault on both of them. Okay, she said at last. I can't believe I'm about to say this. I live close by. It's small, really small, but I have a couch and a shower and some soup I can heat up, if you want. Every warning bell he'd ever been taught rang in his head. Don't go home with strangers. Don't trust anyone. Don't put them at risk. Don't put yourself at risk. Don't drag an innocent person into your mess. He looked at her. Really looked. At the broken umbrella, at the tired eyes, at the way she'd stood in front of 3 men twice her size because she couldn't stomach the idea of stepping over a body tomorrow. If you're worried I'm some kind of psycho, he said quietly, you probably shouldn't invite me in. She snorted. If you try anything weird, I'll throw you back out and scream so loud the building will sue me for noise pollution, she said. I'm not stupid, just unable to mind my own business when people are being kicked in the rain. Something in his chest, tight for so long it had started to feel normal, loosened a fraction. I don't want to be a problem, he said. You don't know me. I know enough, she replied. I know you didn't hit them back. I know you said that was all you had. And I know most people just walked by and pretended they didn't see any of it. Sometimes that's all I need to know about someone. She stuck out her free hand. I'm Lily, she added. Lily Hart. The name was simple, honest. It fit her. Ethan, he said. The rest of his name, that heavy, sharp word, stuck in his throat. He let it. Just Ethan. Well, just Ethan, Lily said. Are you coming, or are you planning to audition for a pneumonia commercial tonight? He looked once more at the tower that used to be his. A column of light and glass stabbing the low clouds, and then at the small, crooked umbrella shielding him from the worst of the rain. He had come to the street to lose everything. Maybe, he thought, this was where he started to find something. Okay, he said softly. I'll come. She smiled, quick and tired and real. Good. And for the record, you can pick up your coins first. Pride's nice. So is bus fare. Together they crouched and gathered the scattered coins from the wet pavement. Her hand brushed his once. His skin felt colder than the rain. She didn't flinch. Let's get you out of here, Ethan, Lily said, straightening up, before the city finds a new way to kick you. He followed her down the sidewalk, away from the building that still glowed with the power he'd walked away from. Behind him, the news screens kept looping the same phrase. Where is Ethan Ward? Out here, on the wet pavement. The answer was simple. He was no one. He was everyone. He was a man with a paper cup and a stranger's kindness. And whether he knew it or not, he'd just stepped into the one story money could never buy. By the time Ethan learned her name, his teeth had stopped chattering, but his heart was shaking harder than ever. The girl with the broken umbrella was about to do something far more reckless than facing down 3 men in the rain. She was about to invite a stranger into her life. "What's your name?" he asked again, voice low, as if saying it too loud would make her vanish. "Lily," she said. "Lily Hart." It suited her. Simple, honest, a little soft around the edges, and steel somewhere underneath. "I'm Ethan," he said. He stopped there. No ward, no legacy, no skyscrapers, just Ethan. The other syllables of his real name felt like a lie now, a title belonging to a life he'd chosen to bury. Billionaire, chairman, untouchable. None of them fit the man kneeling in the rain in cheap jeans and a second-hand jacket, cradling a crumpled paper cup. "You're freezing," Lily said. She tipped the umbrella more toward him, letting the rain hit her hair instead. "There's a shelter a few blocks away, but it's probably packed by now. It always is when it rains." She bit her lip, thinking. The tiny, unremarkable movement pulled at him more than any dramatic gesture could have. Somewhere behind them, a car horn blared. The city went on, not caring. "Look," she said finally. "I live close by. Really small place, but there's a couch, hot shower, leftover soup I can heat up, if you want." He hesitated. A lifetime of caution and security protocol screamed at him. Don't go home with strangers. Don't drag civilians into your mess. Don't risk them. Don't risk yourself. He looked at her, rain in her hair, coat stained and fraying, umbrella half broken and still held over him. She'd already risked more than most people with a lot more to lose. "I don't want to be a burden," he said. "You don't know anything about me." "I know enough," she replied. "You didn't hit those guys back. You said that was all you had, and you let me help instead of trying to impress me. Sometimes that's enough." He almost laughed. No one had accused him of not trying to impress people in years. "If it makes you feel better," she added dryly, "if you try anything weird, I will throw you out and scream loud enough to wake the whole building." "That does make me feel better," he said, surprised to find it was true. She held out her free hand. "Well then, come on, just Ethan." Lily lived in a narrow, tired building 3 blocks away. The stairwell smelled like bleach and something fried several days ago. A single hallway light flickered, buzzing faintly above the chipped banister. "Sorry about the stairs," she puffed as they climbed. "The elevator died before I moved in. Pretty sure the landlord calls it vintage charm on the listing." "I've known much more expensive buildings with less charm," Ethan murmured before he could stop himself. She glanced back. "What?" "Nothing," he said quickly. "Bad joke." "Careful," he reminded himself. It didn't matter how many nights he'd spent in penthouses and 5-star hotels. Right now, those belonged to someone else. Lily unlocked a door near the end of the hall and pushed it open. Her apartment really was tiny, but it glowed with a warmth no amount of money could manufacture. A small sofa under a thin woven throw, a chipped coffee table stacked with books, a kitchenette with mismatched mugs on an open shelf, and a stubborn plant clinging to life on the windowsill. Cheap string lights hung around the window frame like someone had tried to pin up hope. "Welcome to my 5-star palace," she said, a little embarrassed. "Shoes off at the door. Couch is yours tonight. Bathroom's at the end of the hall. There's a clean towel in the cabinet. Please don't judge the shower curtain. It's older than I am." "It's perfect," Ethan said, and he meant it. After hours of cold concrete and colder stairs, the little room felt like an impossible miracle. He set his small bag down by the sofa. Once, that bag had only carried custom-tailored shirts and hand-polished shoes. Now it held cheap t-shirts and neutral-colored clothes chosen to help him disappear. "Go take a hot shower," Lily said, already moving toward the kitchen. "You're shaking. I'll heat up the soup." "You don't have to do all this," he said. "I know," she said, "but I'm doing it anyway." The bathroom was barely big enough for him to turn around in. To Ethan, it might as well have been a spa. Steam fogged the cracked mirror as hot water finally began to run clear. He stepped under it and felt the cold peel away from his skin, layer by layer. Dirt and city grime swirled down the drain in brown streaks, sweeping away the last visible traces of the man on the sidewalk. He braced his hands on the tile and let the water pound over his neck. He thought of marble bathrooms and heated floors and showers that turned on at a voice command. He'd walked away from all of that by choice. "This is what you wanted," he reminded himself. "No insulation, no distance, no privilege between you and the world." Yet the guilt didn't wash off with the dirt. Every kind thing Lily did, offering her couch, her food, her water, was a weight on his conscience. She thought she was helping a man who had really lost everything. She didn't know she was feeding a fallen king who had set his own throne on fire. He shut off the water and stood there for a moment, listening to the pipes groan. "You asked for this experiment," he thought. "Now live with what it costs." He dried off and pulled on the worn hoodie and sweatpants Lily had left on a stool. They were a little short at the ankles, a little big in the shoulders. They didn't look like anything he'd ever owned. Somehow, they suited him now. When he caught his reflection in the mirror, hair damp, clothes soft and ordinary, he looked more like the version of himself he remembered from before the suits and the boardrooms, before the world decided his name meant something. Maybe this was closer to the truth than the man in the headlines had ever been. The smell of soup wrapped around him like a second blanket as he stepped back into the living room. Lily had set 2 bowls on the coffee table, steam curling up into the air. "Wow," he said. "You weren't kidding about the 5-star service." "Don't get used to it," she said, handing him a spoon. "First night is on the house. After that, we charge in dishwashing labor." They sat on opposite sides of the little table. The soup was simple: broth, noodles, a few slices of carrot and potato, but it was hot and real, and more satisfying than any tasting menu he'd endured for appearances. "Okay," Lily said after a few minutes of quiet eating. "Important questions first." Ethan tensed. "Important? How? Life or death?" Her tone was serious, but her eyes glinted. "Do you snore?" He almost choked on a noodle. "I don't think so." "Good. My mom will be thrilled." "Your mom?" "Yeah, she's asleep in the bedroom. You'll meet her tomorrow if she's feeling okay. And if she doesn't immediately kick you out on principle." He set his spoon down. "I don't want to cause any trouble between you and your family," he said. Lily shrugged one shoulder. "We already have trouble," she said lightly. "You're just a guest star." He hesitated. "Is she all right?" "She has good days and bad days," Lily said. "Bad lungs, bad back, bad healthcare system." Her smile was quick and wry. "I do mornings at the diner down the street, and some nights at a tiny bookstore that still thinks paperbacks will save the world. She mostly manages the apartment and yells helpful things at the TV." "You work 2 jobs," Ethan said, "and you still took in a stranger from the sidewalk." She poked at her soup. "Someone did something similar for us once," she said. "Not the couch part, but close enough. Feels wrong not to keep the chain going." He swallowed against the lump in his throat. For a moment, he could almost feel dashboards lighting up, messages waiting on screens he'd abandoned, investors demanding answers, Damien spinning narratives. Here, a woman was just trying to make rent, take care of her mother, and be decent to one person in the rain. "If this is where you tell me you're secretly awful," Lily added, "now's the time. I don't want to find out from a true crime podcast." He exhaled slowly. "Time to put the mask on." just not the one he'd worn his whole adult life. "I used to work in construction," he said, choosing his words carefully. That part was true, long before the suits. "Started on sites, then in the office, got promoted faster than I knew how to handle. Life became meetings and flights and screens." "Sounds exhausting," she said. It was. He stared down at his spoon. And when the company started to fall apart, the solution was simple for them. Cut people. Cut costs. Cut anything that didn't protect the top. My job. My place to live. "Safety?" Lily suggested quietly. "Something like that." He kept the rest of the truth buried. The trusts, the legal gymnastics, the decision to walk away instead of quietly patching the cracks. So when the work stopped,